to the Bet on C2C podcast. Welcome to episode 9, and it is week 7 of the 2022 CFB season, and we are rolling right along. Of course, I have a co-host with me. It is Ethan Sowers at Ethan Sowers. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing good. We've gotten through 6 weeks. We've got this week, and then we got 6 more on the tail end of the season. So we're midpoint of the season here. So I'm super pumped for it.
And it's going by way too fast. And then next thing you know, I'm going to have to just be, relying on CFL in the summer times to get me through with no football. But if we have our guest as well, and of course he is a CFF analysis and also a co-host in his own podcast for Fantasy Points. You see the hat if you're watching on YouTube. If not, if you're listening in, he's rocking a very sweet black hat that has the Fantasy Points. Mr. Josh Chevalier at CFF Guys. How are we doing tonight, buddy?
Doing well, man. Just excited to be on with you guys and talk some prize picks and DFS, man.
Yeah, man, that's what we're all about. Well, we're lost Chris K for the week. He is not feeling well. He should be back next week. There's still some speculation. Maybe there might have been a few losses by maybe a couple of us and maybe a certain somebody as a guest down below. We're not sure yet, but we'll let him listen to this and he can give his 2 cents. I'm sure him and Josh will have a nice conversation in Twitter DMs. So, it is what it is. I think this week Chris K has chosen love and not violence, so that is also great as well. But he was also nice enough to give us his pick, so he did contribute. But we hope that Chris gets better soon. We should see him next week. So we'll be glad to have Mr. K back soon as well. But let's get started. Of course, we got a bit of housekeeping to do real quick. Of course, you can visit all of our stuff over at campus2kn.com. We have articles, tools. Speaking of tools, we have a new one for our NIL guys that we're previewing. It's something that's coming down the pipe real quick that Jarek and a couple of guys that are doing the development has done. So if you're an NIL member already, you're already getting this, a little sniff at that. But it'll be coming out pretty soon, so keep it locked on there as well. Of course, the year 0 as far as the freshmen that are coming on, that's also being tracked as well. So that's something that Austin and Jarek is also doing in NIL check. So I'd definitely say if you're not, get a membership just so you can hop in the NIL with us, come talk to us, hang out, just have a friendly conversations and be our friends. That's all we ask for you to do as well. So everything and anything over at campus2kn.com. Of course, we have the in-season edge, which is for our in-season only at $29.99. All the gaming content that you ever need. So as far as prize picks, the stuff that we don't have on the pod here, the stuff that's in the chat personally, whether it's Chris Moxley or Alfred or those guys, they're picking those for you as well. Of course, you get everything as far as in the private discourse first. So when the lines are coming out for the picks of the week, got Moxley and Alfred and those guys already on there Sunday afternoon while everyone's watching NFL like myself. They're already digging into the lines and seeing what can be bet on and what's not on there as well. Everything from the scholarship level. And, of course, you get the first look. Like we're talking about, there's new tools and projects that are getting dropped, but you guys are seeing it first. So you'll be able to see that all throughout the season. Of course, you can always go back to scholarship or pick the NIL if you want to after the season ends. That way you can get stuff like the Future Freshman podcast. We have that in the off season. You can get first look of, things like we're talking about and things like that, and just keep the conversation going as we're building for those that are in Debbie or those that are in the year-long dynasties that like we are in as well. So definitely go check that out. Of course, we have the prize picks. We have the matching deposit up to $100. If you use the promo code C2C, that also gives you a discount on the in-season edge. That also gives you a spot there as well. So go check that out. Of course, we did the prize picks here. And of course, Josh is here to help you guys out with a few of his picks as well. So definitely go check that out if you can as well. And we're going to do our campus picks. But first, I want to send it over back to Josh. Josh, tell us about Fantasy Points, what you do there, the podcast, which I'm a fan of. Just tell the people what you got going on and what you do on like a weekly basis here during the season in CFF.
Yeah, so I do all of our CFF kind of weekly content. So I do a waiver wire article, rankings, and then I do some DFS stuff as well, mainly cash centric. So cash single entry lineups, both for Friday slates and then also the Saturday main slate. And then we do Discord, kind of like everybody does. And then I do a weekend tailgate live stream that's all DFS main slate stuff with Wes Huber. And if you don't know Wes, that dude is just brilliant.
He's the man.
And so I just sit there and listen to Wes talk and then try not to look too dumb. So, and I don't know if I achieved that, but man, that dude looks like a genius next to me for sure. So we have fun though, man. And it's a really good time over there. So yeah, appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely, man. Definitely go check out the podcast. I know that one's there. I know we have the tailgate here at Campus to Canton, so I have to go and rewatch the episodes. But from what I see, you're not looking dumb, man. You're looking pretty smart, I must say.
I appreciate that.
You guys have hit on a few lines and stuff like that as well. So we'll talk about that in the episode as far as like games you like this week and something that you would probably want to, throw a bet on or something like that. We can do that as well. But we're going to add and start with the Campus Picks. And of course, that is presented by the Prize Picks. Even though Kay wasn't here, he was able to give us, his two takes there. And of course, we'll just use Josh and Ethan as kind of the soundboard and their thoughts and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and start. And of course, we have Josh and Ethan's on the next one. I had to face some music. I was on the Anchor Blotters podcast with my friends Farnsworth there and Owens, and they brought to my attention that Mitchell Tinsley is not doing very well. And this hurts my heart, but it probably hurts Ethan even more being a Penn State fan that he is. However, he's always said that Mitchell Tinsley might not be the true wide receiver one. It might depend on the week, and he's been very adamant about that. I was the guy that, pounded on the board that Mitchell Tinsley would be wide receiver one. He was my guy, the guy that I picked on there as well. Not doing so hot recently. He takes on Michigan. That's a tough matchup. I'm still pulling for Penn State because I still think the talent's there, especially with Nick Singleton on the rise, Keyshawn Allen. I just think they're starting to push it together. They've had a bye week, whereas Michigan actually had to play last week, even though it wasn't a very big opponent. They still had to play. So fresh legs, fresh mindset for Penn State. So I like that narrative as well. Kay's not on, so he can't defend his Michigan Wolverines in this time or web. But I'm thinking that Mitchell Tinsley has a tough matchup against the Michigan defense. I am going less for 12.0 on the fantasy points. Then going back to the drawing board, Mr. Don Kincaid, who helped me out in some fantasy lineups last week as well in some DFS. I'm going 9.5 because he's never gone under that, but only once this entire season. So he's been well over 12 fantasy points. So that is my more and less. Gentlemen, if you want to chime in, I know Ethan, you might have something to say about Mitchell, but Josh, if you have something about either or, feel free to chime in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm taking the under in just about everything with that Penn State Michigan game. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. I mean, 12 points isn't much for Tinsley.
Right.
I mean, I know I've pounded the table for Parker Washington, but I feel like this is a game where Tinsley is actually better adjusted and better suited for production. So, I mean, if I would have had the option of Tinsley or Washington with this line, I probably would take Tinsley as the best chance to hit it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Michigan's really done a great job of defending big plays in the passing game. Did a little dive this weekend and saw they have given up only 12 pass plays over 20 yards this year. And so it definitely seems like if Penn State's going to be moving the ball, it's going to be, dink and dunk, and it's going to have to be Sean Clifford getting in rhythm. That dude is unlike any quarterback I've ever seen, in where if he's in rhythm, awesome. Like 2-minute drills, the dude can drive 90 yards in 2 minutes. I'm no doubt about that. You give him 15 minutes and his full use of the playbook and huddle and the world, and the dude just melts down. So, I think that it's possible that that Tinsley could hit it, but I'm with you on there. I think the less is the smart play, and Kincaid is, with Keefe out, he's the guy there. So I love that play.
Yeah, I think Kincaid's pretty rules up. Josh, what do you think about the two options, man?
Yeah, man, I'll defer to Ethan with anything on Penn State, so I won't touch that too much. And it's just, to me, it's unpredictable. I mean, part of with Michigan too, it's just like, they've played their competition just other than Maryland, like nobody could really hang with them offensively. So it's just unpredictable in my opinion of what they'll do. But Kincaid, yeah, for sure, more. I mean, that dude, like Ethan said, like since Keithy went out, man, that guy's been unbelievable. So I love that. Absolutely, a 9.5 for sure. I like it.
All right, so Kay went with Quinn Ewers over the 245.5 passing yards. They playing, I believe that's Iowa State that they're taking on, if I want to say. And then Chris Rodriguez, he also had more for 88.5 against Mississippi State. Definitely comfortable with the Chris Rodriguez one. Ewers, what your guys' thoughts? Is he, is he still matchup proof, or is he one of those guys to where, like, you think Iowa State is the Iowa State of old that can hold people down for a certain amount of yards? Do you still think he could pass on him? What's your thoughts on Quinn Ewers? Because I think Chris Rodriguez is a no-brainer unless you guys think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the Ewers line it seems pretty like it's a pretty good number. The 22 45 and a half there. I think from what I saw, Iowa State's still putting up pretty good raw numbers against the pass. They're averaging 179.4 yards through the air. Granted, I'm not sure what their non-conference schedule looks like outside of that. I didn't pay much attention to them before conference play kicked in, so they could be the beneficiaries of some good matchups there. But I mean, if Ewers is who we believe he is, he
Right.
shouldn't have an issue with this. So I'm on board with that. I get where Kate's coming from there. Chris Rodriguez, since he's been active and back in the lineup, I mean he's crushed. He does it all. They do a great job of getting him the ball any way they can. So even if they do fall behind to the Bulldogs, I think he's going to get some work through the passing game too. So I would have personally went with the fantasy score if that were me looking at Chris Rodriguez.
Same.
But 88.5, it's a good day, not a great day for Chris. So I get it.
Josh, what do you think about Quinn this year? I haven't got a chance to really pick your brain about him.
Yeah, man, I love Quinn. I mean, I think he's awesome. Obviously, you saw what he did against Bama in the short time he was in there. And then you saw what he did against OU this last weekend. I mean, this kid, and I think like Sark is on his game with his play calling. Even like I went to the West Virginia game a couple weeks ago and Card was the quarterback. But man, like what stood out in that game is the play calling is just incredible coming from Sark right now. So I really like this Iowa State secondary. I think they're really good, but I just think Quinn's going to be able to pass for 245 yards. I mean, he's one of my favorite plays. We'll talk about it later, but on DFS this week at 5.7K. So I certainly think he can hit over 245. I think that's a really good pick. Chris Rodriguez, I'm with Ethan. If this was points, and we'll talk about this in a minute because I think it was one of the ones I picked, but if it was points, I'd be all over. But 88.5 is like tough because a Shane last week or 2 weeks ago had like 119 yards against them. And then last week, Raheem Sanders, Rocket, he had 86. He only had 86 rushing yards. I mean, I obviously had more than that total, right? So if it was a total yards, I'd be all about it. But 88 seems like right at that number. That feels like a good number that Prize Picks put up this week. So I could definitely see him doing it, but I could also see him going under because Rocket's no joke, man. I mean, that dude's a good runner. And if they held him to 86 yards, and they're similar backs, in my opinion, as far as the ability to break tackles and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's a little bit more risky in my opinion. I would take points, but we'll talk about that here in a minute.
I had to go and fact check myself on that Iowa State schedule out of conference. They had Iowa and pre-hype Adrian Martinez, so they're definitely the benefactor of some poor passing games. So I like that Ewers number even more now after seeing that.
Me and Ethan like to call these ones that are too close on Price Picks great value ones, like the Walmart one, where it's not quite
Walmart
the
pricing.
brand. Yeah, Walmart pricing, where it's like you're just probably better off just moving along. But it seems like Kay has a lot of faith in Rodriguez, and you guys did too. We'll move to the next slide here. Of course, this is Ethan, that one. We have a Riley Leonard spotting twice. So I'll let both you guys talk on Leonard. Of course, they're going against my boys and their shoddy defense that I vented on the Ankle Biters podcast. You're going to listen about a full minute rant about how I wish we could, tackle anyone and everyone and wrap someone up. But anyway, go check that out if you want to. But looks like we'll start with Josh here. You have Chris Rodriguez at the 14.5 fantasy points. What about the fantasy points? And I think Ethan explained a little bit what was your process picking fantasy points over a certain prop like passing or rushing.
Yeah, so I mean, if you go to Chris Rodriguez total yards over the last 2 weeks when he's been in, I mean, it's 119.5 and then 22.5 touches, and essentially I think 2 catches per game. You have to 4 catches in one game essentially. And Mississippi State's defense has given up 23.7 points per game to opposing running backs, and that's the way they're going to win, especially with Will Levis. Is he even playing? Do we know? Is he like definitely out or?
I don't know, Ethan. I know he's questionable last time I saw. I don't know. They're keeping.
Yeah, I mean, at best he's like hobbled, and I mean, I think this is a Chris Rodriguez game. I think 14.5 is way too low. I mean, because 119 yards. Like, say he gets that, right? If he does that, he's probably gotten 20, 25 receiving yards, and then which means he got the catches too. So, I mean, I think he's going to get there, if not eclipse it at 14 and a half.
And from what I hear, Dane Key's banged up. I think Baron Brown's probably the only one healthy. So even if Levis can go, he's only got like half of it. I think but Robinson's still okay for the most part, even though he might be a little nicked up. So seems like it's imperative that Chris Rodriguez kind of carries this load, at least this week against Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Let's go with Riley Leonard, since you both have him. We'll start with Josh and we'll go to Ethan. Is it the defensive matchup, or you just really like it? Because Leonard has put up some good numbers. Duke's actually playing fairly well, especially on offense and defense. They're not too bad either. So I think it's, this is a rivalry. This is the one I've been circling for a little while. Had to go through Miami. Apologies there, Mr. Chevalier, but it's just one of those things to where, my boy Drake May is doing things, and I'm actually really looking forward to the Leonard versus May showdown. This is going to probably be a shootout because there's not much defense to be had in the ACC. So is it what's your thoughts on Leonard this year?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, he's a guy that I liked coming into the year. I mean, he's got, I'd say going into the year, he had like sneaky rushing ability in the sense of like, man, he had a few games of 30 plus yards last year. So he showed some, but then this year he's put up a couple 60-yard games, I think, and a couple touchdowns in those games. And so he has both of those things, and so some of it's Riley, right? And I think he's had 4 of 6 games. He's had 22 plus fantasy points, but it's also the matchup where it's like, well, let's just say this. If you allow Tyler Van Dyke to throw for almost 500 yards on you, like, I'm just going to pick against you. And I think that's probably a good strategy. So I'll let Ethan be more scientific with it. But there you
probably
go.
Just the defense.
I mean, it's totally fair. I wrote this one up. I wrote both of these up in my article that's dropping on Wednesday with some prize picks. So this Riley Leonard number just seems off. I don't know if they're putting I don't know if they're putting a lot of stock in the way that he was Georgia Tech last week or what, because I mean, he was flat against Georgia Tech, but I think Georgia Tech, they're not. They fired Collins, right? He's out of there for sure.
I think 2 weeks now, I want to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've got a little fire on a team that wants to perform for their interim guy. You've got guys who they've got a little bit of momentum. They want to prove their spot. Coaching staffs usually come in after the interim guys in there. They kind of open up the depth chart and let everybody battle for position, so everybody's playing hard. And that Georgia Tech defense has never been awful. I think it's a pretty decent defense. At worst, I don't think they're any worse than North Carolina. I'd say that they're pretty better than North Carolina, at least from what I've seen. So
me too.
It seems like a weird line, but I mean, Riley Leonard can get this in the first half. Like, I'm legitimately. I think this is a smash. I think this is the line that they're using to get more people to put money on. They know you got to hit on at least 2, so I think this is the appetizer that they're trying to get people in the door with. So
it's a good point. Yeah, and I mean, the only other thing I could think of, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I was like, like Jalen Calhoun may be out. And maybe that's part of why he struggled. I don't know, but yeah, Riley Leonard seems like a lock here to do well. And UNC's given up 28 plus fantasy points in 4 of their 5 FBS games so far. Yeah. So it's just hard to imagine him not being able to hit value here.
Yeah. And I give the Calhoun thing a little bit more credence if he was truly a target monster, but I mean, he's definitely the wide receiver 1, but I mean, he's pulling in probably 22-23% of the targets from what I remember. So not anything crazy, but I mean, that's definitely, if you're looking for a reason, that's one of the only reasons I can find on why this line might be where it is. So that's totally fair.
Yep. And then, of course, it's a rivalry. So honestly, it's going to be a shootout. I hope it's good for all you guys. I just hope we win and are able to outscore the points so we can come home with this W. I just want to keep the bell in Chapel Hill. I want to light up the bell. I want Carolina blue at the end of the night. So that's all I can hope for.
I think you're safe there after seeing what Jalen Daniels did to Duke.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah, Calhoun came through big for me against the Kansas game. That was one where I had the Riley Leonard and Calhoun stack, and it paid off for me. But Calhoun,
nice
but it was a hit or miss. Like me and Ethan were discussing it, and so was Kay on that episode. That Calhoun was very, very hit or miss. I got lucky. It was one of his hit weeks. So, but I think Riley Leonard, regardless, because he's got weapons, whether he's giving it to Waters, there's the backup quarterback that actually catches out of the backfield too. Like I like the new coach system. I really do like what Duke's going. Like now it's competitive. It's not going to be like it's just Carolina's playing Duke in football. It's a Carolina win right now. It's like this is actually a pretty good matchup as far as like little to no defense, but still two good offenses. So definitely looking forward to this one as well.
Yeah,
Ethan,
that Kevin Johns hire was elite. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. It was good. It makes the ACC competitive. Makes me sweat more, even more than App State game. So it is what it is. Let's move on to Aiden Robbins before I go on another hour about the Tar Heels. So Aiden Robbins, of course, our Week 0 hero. You got him going less this time, 15.5. It is Air Force, so I kind of understand. But tell me why less on Aiden Robbins.
Yeah, I mean, Air Force isn't as tough of a matchup as they've been in the past. They're above average. I want to say they're around like 58th in rush defense from what I saw this week. So they're middling. The big thing for me is I don't think Doug Brimfield is going to be able to go again this week. And the way that offense looked against San Jose State last week was miserable. Cameron Friel is not it. I mean, I'm still shocked Harrison Bailey is just way worse than we thought he was, apparently. But, I mean, Friel went 15 for 22, 153 yards. A lot of that was in garbage time after San Jose was already up by 32, 35 points. So, but Robbins barely got over 50 yards. He got 13 carries, 55 yards, and 3 catches for 27 yards on that one. And some of that came while Brumfield was still in the game in the first quarter. So my thought on here, I think Air Force is a step up than the San Jose State defense. And I think that with Brumfield, I am very concerned about them staying on the field. Air Force is going to be able to run the ball, be able to, drain the clock. It's going to be very methodical. So I've talked Robbins up all year long. I've loved him, but the situation's changed. So I like the less here. I am actually super confident in these two plays, more so than usual on a given week. So I've already put about half of my usual bankroll on just these two guys. So I'm very excited to see how they do. I'd love for Robbins to exceed my expectations here. I got him everywhere in C2C leagues, but I don't think this is it this week.
And yeah, it just seems like Leonard is way too low, and it seems like Robbins is just kind of way too high. Like they're just banking on past performances, and it might just be a cut and paste thing where they're just moving the number up a little bit on previous games and stuff like that. We still haven't found that formula just yet, but a lot of times they're banking off like a previous game or like maybe a game before, or what their mindset is. It's really interesting.
And I mean, you think about 15.5 points and you think, oh, that's not anything crazy, because we think 20 points is a good game, so anything less than 20 points is average at best. So, but when you think about it, I mean, if Robbins doesn't get in the end zone, do we really think he's going to get anywhere near the century mark on the ground? I don't. And even if he gets his 3 catches for 20 yards or whatever that is, that's still 100 yards or 60 yards and a touchdown that we need to see. So I'm all over that Robbins line.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all.
Yeah.
So Josh, tell me about our it was preseason darling Bryce Ford Wheaton here. He had a pretty good week 1. Been hit or miss there as well. He's 15.5 fantasy scores coming up. I didn't see where you have a more or less. Which way did you take it this week against Baylor?
Oh yeah, so I took the more on this one. Sorry about that. And I took the more because I'm banking on West Virginia losing this game, and in their 3 losses, like his numbers have been bonkers. And then of course they're skewed from the first 3 weeks, but in those losses, he's getting 13.6 targets, 9 receptions, 114 yards, and then 4 total TDs. And he's averaging 29.4 fantasy points per game. And so even in the Texas game, he had, I think it was like 13 targets for 9 receptions and like 90 yards or something. So, I mean, I think that's probably a little bit more in line with what he would do in a game like this or in conference play. But also, like, Baylor's pretty bad against opposing wide receivers. They're ranked 104th in wide receiver fantasy points per game in PPR formats. And they're giving up like 40.2 fantasy points per game. And in fact, I think in every game against Power 5 opponents, they've given up 40 plus fantasy points. And so, you know, you're just divvying that up and saying, okay, what is the percentage of yards that a guy like Bryce Wheaton or even Caden Prater is going to get? And I think Bryce Wheaton at 15.5 is he'll be able to get that because they're just going to sling the rock around, especially with, Donaldson out and and the rest of the running backs are pretty average. So that's my thinking.
Josh, what was your take on the Donaldson and the eligibility thing? What was your take since it was a hot topic? I'm interested to know what you thought. You like us?
I mean,
says it goes and goes.
Yeah, I mean, I have them everywhere, and
Right.
so my whole thing is like, and I had Devin Johnson years ago when I first started,
Right.
and he had the tight end eligibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm cool with whatever Fantrax wants to do, man. Yeah. Let Fantrax decide, and they never take away eligibility. So, but in all fairness, like in leagues I commission, I'm like, man, let Fantrax decide, but also get, as long as it's clearly stated beforehand, of like whatever they're rostered at. Because the other thing is like, here's my thing. If you want to do that with CJ Donaldson and take that away, that's fine. But then to give Aranda Gadsden his tight end designation because he's a tight end on the roster, nobody's talking about that. So I don't know. People like are too worried about what's in front of them and what they feel like is unfair. But a guy like Gadsden, then let's give him tight end designation is my point.
I just wanted to point out to Chris K that everyone's allowed to have CJ Donaldson at tight end if they want to be concerned. Because he doesn't play like a tight end. It doesn't mean that he has to not be there. Plus, they changed the destination, so what does it really matter? But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to Bank On. Of course, this is sponsored by DraftKings, where we're picking up the lineups. Josh is a more the cash guy. We're going to get him more into a GPP mindset coming up here and see if we can help you guys win some money. What I want to show the YouTube audience and what I'm going to tell the people that are listening is that this is a Curtis Warwick week, my friends, because I think all of us actually have Curtis Warwick on the lineup, which is fantastic. So we'll just talk about Curtis Warwick, and if you're pairing him with the wide receiver, or if you're going to do like I did it with a little bit of different, a little running back stack instead. But some people are taking good old Sam. I cannot pronounce his last name, so I'm going to leave that to Ethan. Ethan, if you want to take a credit that guy's last name.
Yeah, I think I heard Jared call him Sam Wiggles. So we're gonna piggyback on
That's
that.
right.
Can't be right, but we're gonna go with it.
If it is,
he said Wiggles. That's awesome. That's what I would do too.
That's what it is.
I love it.
So you might as well just put another just call him Sam Wiggles. The dude's been winning out of control recently, so he's been doing good. So a lot of people are focused on that. I went with the good old saving here at 5,500. I just thought like he's gonna be able to do that. Western Michigan doesn't scare me as far as that one. They're decent. This is MAC. So, out of the MAC, I like Western Michigan is probably the better defense out of it. But we're still talking about the MAC. And so I won't make people now. This is the time when you bring out all you guys you've been waiting, sitting on, especially CFF, but also DFS. You can pivot from the bigger games and then focus on these MAC ones. So, Ethan was talking in the Slack channel. And it's like, we've been chipped so many times with good games, but they have blessed us with at least this Ohio versus Western Michigan matchups. They're happy about it. Curtis Warwick's only 6,200, guys. I think he smashes over that. I could think he'd probably get almost 3 times that the way he's playing with these 30-point games, 50-point games. Ethan, what's your thought process with Curtis Warwick this week, man?
So I was really hoping we'd get Toledo Kent State. That was my my MAC desire for this week. But I'll be honest, I didn't really look at this Ohio Western Michigan game until it was picked on the slate. And Curtis Warwick is way too cheap. I am going to have 85% Curtis Warwick across 150 lineups this week. Like, just some stats here that I really like. Okay, so Ohio, they have on the season 31 explosive pass plays. Those are pass plays that have gone for more than 20 yards. For reference, Tennessee has had 24, Maryland has had 25, Alabama's had 22. Let's see who else is on this slate. Okay, so Georgia's not on the slate. They've only had 27, and they're up there. So 32 or 31, I'm sorry, explosive pass plays this year for Ohio.
Wow.
Compare that to the defensive explosive pass rate for Western Michigan, where they have allowed 22 explosive pass plays for the defense. So I'm all over Curtis Rourke there. If Western Michigan was able to throw the ball just a little bit better, I would stack the hell out of this game, because Ohio, even though they've gotten 31 explosive pass plays, they have allowed 32 explosive pass plays on defense. So this is fully in play for a full game stack, I think. If Western Michigan's going to be throwing the ball, I don't know, is Salopek still? I'm assuming he's still their starting quarterback. I haven't heard anything.
Are they changing the guard yet?
Yeah. I haven't heard anything against that, but I mean, they haven't been able to throw the ball. They're 115th in the country in passing this year. So I am all in on anything I can get with this game. I think the over under of 60 is conservative. I think that a lot of these MAC games, especially when they're in the middle of the week, on a short week where you don't get a chance to prepare, the MAC games can really underwhelm, and they can really hit that under with gusto. But on the flip side, I mean, we've seen what these MAC matchups are at their best, and they're shootouts. They're fun games, and these two teams line up incredibly well for some explosive plays on both sides of the ball. So, 6,200 for Curtis Rourke. And I'm saying all of this about the explosive pass plays that they can get without even touching the fact that this dude is a machine on the ground with his legs too.
Yeah.
Like, I could easily see him getting, a 40, 50 point day and just ruining so many people's day with this slate, being the late hammer in this slate with the 2:30 kickoff. Man, I am pumped for some Ohio Western Michigan this weekend.
Ethan, do you think many people are going to be on Curtis? I mean, is he going to have a high ownership, do you think? Or
I do. I do think he's going to have increased ownership. I feel like it's always weird. We've got these touts who are writing up DFS matchups and who to go after. Some of them are behind a paywall. Some of them aren't behind a paywall. There are two or three guys in particular that I am very interested to see if Curtis Rourke is in their write-ups this week, because there are certain guys in the industry who slant ownership. And I think these guys are going to be on Curtis Rourke this weekend. So I think we'll see ownership. But the thing is, I mean, it's a main slate. If this were a midweek Maction matchup, he'd be 80-85% owned, and it'd be miserable.
Yeah.
Like nobody would benefit from a good game from him.
Yeah,
but
you
even
think
on
maybe 20s?
Slate, yeah, I'm thinking between probably 18 and 25. I'd be surprised if he's any more than 25% owned. And with that, there's still a huge edge that you can get on the rest of the field. The thing is, there aren't many games this weekend that are really star power and really big totals. Yeah. Compared to last week, and I mean, last week was a letdown, I think, compared to what we were expecting.
Totally.
Yeah. But from what I saw this week, we've got, I think, 3 or 4 of the 13 games on the slate are above a 60-point total. Ohio, Western Michigan coming in just under that. That could be the saving grace for ownership for him. The fact that they are just right now at a 60-point over/under. If that number grows, and we see some of these other, Alabama, Tennessee, if we see some regression of that number back towards the other way, maybe we'll see some ownership rise. But It's not egregious. I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of running out a lot of Rourke this weekend.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it comes to there's still the casuals that don't really know
And
about racking. You know what I'm saying? Like,
the key too with that,
so it's helpful.
the key too, I think, is going to be who you sack him with, because the field might be on Rourke, but they are going to be way less confident on who's Sammy Wiggles. I'm not putting him in my
Yeah.
lineup. So we'll see. We'll see. And
Yeah.
I think too,
That's a good point.
DraftKings had somebody else higher priced than Sammy. I think they had another receiver.
Yeah, there's another one.
Like Bostic or
yeah, or something
yeah,
like
Bostic. Bostic is the highest price there.
yeah,
So
that man.
we could.
they just don't know how his offense, so they're like guessing. So like Wiggles is going under the radar, even though look at his fantasy points per game, but yeah, he's 5,000 versus Bostic not doing as much, and he's like what 6,000 or something like that. He's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's got 17.5 point target share, while Bostic has 10.5% target share. So they're neck and neck in yardage. So it looks like Wiggles has 90 yards, Bostic or 290, and then Bostic has 282. So they're definitely production wise pretty equal, but opportunity wise, go with Sammy.
Yeah.
Go with the cheaper
Yeah, for
price,
sure.
higher target guy.
And didn't Bostic have some like crazy game at one point that was just like, I feel like he had a bonkers game that kind of skews some of those numbers.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there. I don't remember what week it was, but I remember seeing him towards the top of my waiver wire with some pretty big production.
Yeah.
So another one I want to point out: 3 out of 4 of us decided to go with the Quinshon Judkins, of course. I think for 6,800, the dude's just hitting his money's worth, if not more, every single week. So it's like ride the hot hand. And you know, Zach Evans trying to save those legs for the NFL. I keep pushing that narrative because it's true, regardless if he's banged up or not. Really just doesn't want to get in there and go for like 30-something touches. That's just not Zach Evans' MO. He's just trying to get the NFL. I understand. But Judkins is absolutely smashing it. I don't really care about his Auburn because Auburn can't stop the run right now. So, take Bixby, he's in the fight of his life in a running back situation this week. So I think Judkins and Evans could be playable this week as well. You guys haven't too. Is it just same thing? Auburn's just not the same Auburn team. Not really worried about a shutdown, and Judkins is on fire, so when you playing, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, with Judkins, I'm on that train this weekend. I wrote up Zach Evans in my Prize Picks article this week because Prize Picks doesn't have a Judkins line. I would have rather taken Judkins there, but we're looking at the 3rd ranked rushing offense against the 100th ranked rushing defense with Ole Miss against Auburn. I'm not too worried there. Also, again, with the explosive plays, Auburn is towards the bottom of the rankings with explosive plays allowed against the rush. They've allowed 9 this year, while Ole Miss has only allowed 2. And again, explosive just means more than 20 yards. So in 6 games, 5 games, I don't know if Auburn's had that bye yet, but about 2 runs for over 20 yards a game. I'm hoping that Judkins gets at least one of those, and we see him take one to the house. I think he had a 40-yarder or something last week that we saw. So hoping he can find the end zone again. I'm a little bit worried that, I feel like Zach Evans has seen his usage fluctuate a little bit. Early in the season, he was averaging about 16 rushes per game. Now I think he's down to about 10 with the emergence of Judkins. I wonder if we're going to see that bounce back up at all and fluctuate a little bit more. Judkins has been the workhorse, and I don't know if many assumed he'd get that role as quick as he has, but I definitely like him for that price here.
Yeah, part of that is injury related too, where a few weeks ago, Zach was quite like they didn't even think he was going to play. I think 2 weeks ago, right? And then I believe it was this game that they were saying he's going to be back 100% healthy. So they've been intentionally limiting his touches the last 2 weeks. So we'll see, though. I mean, Quinshon has done enough that he at least has half of that, if not more, and goal line carries because they're not going to risk Evans around the goal line.
Yeah, it's also something interesting too to kind of keep an eye on. This Ole Miss offense has kind of found its mojo, especially through the air. I know Triggs out, but
Yeah,
Malik Heath and I feel like maybe Jalen Watkins had a few design targeted, schemed open passes. So, there's a chance that they try and air it out a little bit more. But the big advantage for them is definitely on the ground. And you got to think that Zach Evans is starting to, want to stretch his legs a little bit, get a little bit more on tape for that draft stock. But we'll see how that goes. I think, most of the time I wouldn't even say that that's a factor, but something about Lane Kiffin just strikes me as the kind of guy who, if somebody says, "Hey coach, let me flash something for these scouts," I feel like Lane's going to lean into that and feed him a little bit more. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure. But
that one, get his guys drafted.
Yeah, it does make me like, so when I was constructing my lineup, I initially had, I have Quinshon Judkins on here, and then I went back because I had some, I could go with him or Raheem Sanders and Rocket Sanders, and that was an interesting, exercise to do of like, who do I like? And I actually landed on, like, I think I'll end up landing on Rocket Sanders, even stacking him with KJ, because he's just going to have that volume where I'm like, man, like maybe Quinshon doesn't get maybe just has 11 carries again, and he's just got to be hyper efficient versus, a Rocket that might, he's averaging like 24 touches a game or something crazy right now. And they're playing BYU, and I think BYU will be able to score with them. And I think that'll be an interesting game for sure. So that was an interesting exercise to do in my head between Judkins and Sanders, and what do I think about that?
Yeah, I was able to fit Rocket into mine. I did have to take the discount and go Bangora, but I'm starting to like the Wiggles a little bit better. I might switch it up. There's more than these lineups with this. Just once we're kind of just putting together as far as lineups, but I did like Rocket just to going against BYU. They're not going to stop Rockets. So it's like, who's going to stop that train going on right now? Something I do want to point out while we're talking running backs is Cade decided to go with the returning Mo Ibrahim. However, he goes against Illinois, who's I think number one against the rush there, which is very surprising. But hey, it is what it is. But this conference is known for their running. Of course, Mo's known to most of his fantasy points within like the first quarter when he is available. Do you think Illinois can even stop Mo Ibrahim, or do you think because he's coming off of an injury, he might be a little bit more slow going to come back against Illinois? What's your guys' thoughts on that?
I just don't like this game at all. I want to stay far away from it. These defenses are no joke. Minnesota is allowing 93 rushing yards per game. Illinois is allowing 67.4 rushing yards per game. So you think, they're just getting beat through the air. No, Minnesota has allowed 136 through the air, and Illinois has allowed 183 through the air. These defenses they're fantastic. I think, if anything, I think we're going to see Bielema load the box and say, hey, make Tanner Morgan beat us, which is a good bet. I don't know. I get the appeal of Mo because he's Mo and he can turn it on against anybody. But I would question Chris. Chris probably isn't going to listen to this, so I can say what I want to say here. I don't think Chris would say that Mo Ibrahim is an NFL talent, and I don't think that a guy who's not an NFL talent is going to blow up for being worth almost $9,000 in your lineup against this Illinois defense. So I think there are better spots here. Definitely a contrarian play. I think Andrew Katz was talking with Chris the other day about, you want to target good players in bad situations for low ownership because they have the best chance of being able to overcome those odds. But find a different spot here. I'm not on Ibrahim this week.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, look, K's amazing at GPPs, right? And so this is one of his 150 lineups that he would throw out there, I'm sure. And this is classic GPP written like all of this stuff. And so I dare question Chris K on this, but yeah, Mo Ibrahim seems like, man, that's gonna be really hard to even just hit value.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, we're talking. We need him to hit 27 points to be value, 3 times that salary. That's rough.
I mean, you're talking about he's gonna have to hit 150 and 2 touchdowns essentially, and that just seems like that's a lot for this game.
I mean, if it's against a defense, yeah, because it's Mo. So yeah, he would get in the first quarter, but a little bit different. I think his process is one. This is probably the cheapest we've seen Mo during the season, other than probably week 0 when he destroyed. We all were like, man, that Achilles, right? And he's just like, what Achilles? I'm good to go, and just took off, right? So like, this has to be the cheapest that he's been, right? And so I'm thinking that plus coming back from an injury, I think that's why K's process being the contrarian that he is at times, it's like he's looking for probably lower ownership of Mo than what they're usually being on a weekly basis. That's what I'm probably getting the gist of from his thinking process.
Yeah, and Minnesota is implied team total. They've got 21.5 is what we're looking at. So you're thinking he probably is the guy who gets the touchdowns, but
yeah.
Trayson Potts probably gets his share, especially if they're easing him back at all from injury. It's a rough look, but I honestly, if I'm looking for low ownership, I like the passing game of Minnesota better than I like Mo Ibrahim this week, which is wild to say.
Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, Tanner Morgan's super cheap. He'll probably get some rushing equity. That's another thing with Mo too. Like Tanner Morgan is known to be a goal line vulture every now and then too. So
he is. I want to talk about a guy that we all decided to choose, and that is Mr. Cam Camper. A nice surprise there out of Indiana. Josh, I'm going to let you take the reins here. What do you like Camper against Maryland this week against Towson?
Yeah, I mean, Maryland one is just so bad on D, and they slowed down a hampered Charlie Jones last week, but that's about the best they're going to do. And Cam Camper, I mean, he was sick last week, and that played into some of his struggles, but I'm expecting him to bounce back, and 5,800 is just way too cheap for a guy that can totally crush value in this spot. And Maryland's going to score points, and Indiana's going to have to try to match them. So I like Cam Camper a lot in this situation. Again, to at least hit value, if not crush it.
Yeah, I'm very big on Camper. Just seeing how Indiana fought against Western Kentucky, which is another explosive offense type thing. So just with them. Also, Camper is coming from a week where he played Michigan, so a lot of people were they might be off on him because Camper only got like 5 fantasy points. So I'm kind of taking the same thought process as K. Is like, hey, and it seems like you guys are the same narrative. One, he's cheap price, so I think he hits his total easily, and we get double probably what work there. 2, some people might be sleeping on him because he's coming up against Michigan. 3, he was sick this week, so we might see a full progression. So Ethan, you're on the same boat. That's why you took Camper. Or you got any other thoughts there?
I went Camper mainly for the stack. I think this Maryland Indiana game is probably has just as good a chance as any to be a shootout this week. We've got a 10.5 point spread in favor of Maryland. Maryland's team total of 35, Indiana 24.5. If we know one thing through 6 weeks of college football, it's that Indiana cannot run the football. They're 129th in the league in rushing. 61.2 yards per game is what they're averaging on the ground. I think that they're going to struggle against Maryland. If I'm honest here, I think Maryland is up by 24 going into halftime, and I think Indiana is getting garbage time gold for Camper. And I mean, that's honestly what I want. If I'm not stacking this game with doing a full game stack, if I'm just doing, Talia and one of his receivers and then running it back with Indiana, I want garbage time because Camper is the target magnet. So if they're playing off coverage, he's going to take, that 9-yard gain and be cool with it. And he's going to get 12 of those in the last 11 minutes of the game. Like, that's the kind of upside that Camper has. He can really move you up the board late in the slate, I think. So I like Camper there. I do, anytime it was just an illness, it wasn't anything else that was keeping him out allegedly. So I do want to, make sure he's good to go. His status is clear. But 5,800, I believe we're looking at here for Camper, and averaging 15 targets a game is nuts.
Right.
He's not particularly efficient, but he's gonna get you those catches.
Yeah. And I do see where you did the run back there, and you added with the Jared and the Tolia stack there. So I really like that entire game. You can almost probably make a full game stack if you really want to push that narrative as well, as far as
the
lineups that you throw in there. That would probably one that could possibly hit, along with the Ohio, and I don't know if you really West Michigan. The only one I'm really comfortable with, I think I did Crooms, but now that I hear about the quarterback, I might reevaluate that. But still, for the Ohio's defense, not the greatest either, right? So looking at the max, so if the guy that gets open the most is Crooms, then they just need to search some quarterback that can just get it someone that's one-on-one matchup, and Crooms is the guy that can pull it down. So it's like I'm not opposed to it, but 6,600 there might be some better.
And honestly, when you're targeting teams that have that like their defense gives up the explosive play more than the methodical play, I'd rather just have a single wide receiver to run it back with as opposed to the quarterback, because it's likely going to be a high variance day, where not necessarily the guy who's getting the most targets is going to come up with most points. It's going to be whoever gets lucky and breaks a tackle. I like Crooms there. And I think that's a better bet just banking on one of those receivers than trying to get the full game stack there.
Yeah, I think over the chance with Jones as well. I'm not feeling the McKean one just yet. I'll let you be the comfortable one with McKean there. Even
hey man,
Copeland it's just as
I'm not comfortable. Not comfortable with any Maryland receiver, to be honest. It's not a knock on them. I know Chris would take that and run with it as a knock on them. I think all four of those guys, and even Deichis, their tight end, is they're spreading the ball extremely well. It's just guessing who's going to get the touchdowns against Indiana.
Yeah, when I was looking
didn't they have another tight end go off this week too, like CJ something? I was like, what the heck is going on?
I think so. I know Deichis had like a 68-yard bomb in the third quarter that just like gutted me. I was like, oh man, not again.
Yeah,
which is crazy. I think with Jones, I just was looking on Fantrix and just showed that he was targeted a bit more versus the other ones. So it's like maybe I'm maybe looking more into it, but it seems like he's the first look for Talia. So I'm kind of going with that. If I had to the stack for me, I just wanted to do the run back with him as well. I went with we all remember this name, the last name of Bean. He was the guy at Kansas last year before Cameron Daniels came on board. Bean was actually really good. He's probably one of the best QB2s that I'd probably say in the entire country when it comes to it. I think he's right on up there with guys like, as far as getting stuff done, like a card or someone that's very easily able to understand the game and get it done. He was beat out by Cameron Daniels. I'm going with a Nick and Bean here. No, there's no Bo Nix this time, so we can't go neck and toe like we usually do. That's an ongoing joke, Josh, that if Bo's playing, he's playing. He's playing by himself, no stack. So we call him Nick and Bo, and he said it gets too high sometimes. So he
I'm sure you guys got great naked Bo stories with Chris on. So
we're talking about naked Bo. This time we're talking
Mr. Insider himself.
Yes, Mr. Insider. So I'm going with this stack of Bean. But I do like what you guys going on. I think both of you decided to go with I know Caleb with Quinn, and I believe that I think it was just him that went Quinn, right? So Quinn, but he went Will Mallard. I didn't know this, that Virginia Tech is taking on Miami, so the battle of Josh's team versus the alma mater of Mr. Chris K. There, he went Mallard. What's your thoughts on Mallard against Virginia Tech? I think Titans do pretty good against VTech.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely featured him this last game, and come out of the bye week, and they spread things out, they changed things up in the offense from Miami. Will Mallory's just so inconsistent. That would be my only concern. But I get it. Like if you're going for a guy that like lower ownership percentage versus like a Shoemaker here, or or Jatavian Sanders who are around the same price, then I get it for sure. But I would love if Mallory just went off, but we'll see. He screws me every time I play him in fantasy, so in DFS at least.
Yeah. I had him in a redraft last year. He really just sat my bench the entire year. I think he was pretty banged up last year, though. I was really hoping for some Isaiah Skinner, but I'm not going to lie. And we haven't seen Skinner yet. He's probably a year or so away from kind of being that big guy there.
Well, Elijah Arroyo's out for the year, so Skinner's going to start playing more. Yeah, so we'll see more Skinner coming up.
Skinner might take this job. He's really good at the IMG Academy. Watch a lot of tape on that kid. He's really, really good. Also, you just give Sanders there, another tight end, but they register as wide receiver on DK. You like the matchup? I think Sanders is being very much looked at. I think this would probably be one of the better stacks on like between Ewers and Sanders versus say Ewers and maybe even Xavier Worthy, especially for a cheaper one. It's the same thing for you, Josh. It's just cheap ownership, or you're just like in just the production that's coming out of Texas there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jatavian Sanders, especially with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, I mean, that guy just loves him. He's like basically Wes and I were talking about this on our live stream. He's basically the de facto number 2 target in that offense. I mean, as far as like they scheme him up and design plays for him, both on like some short screens, but then also like in the red zone. I mean, if you remember that Bama game where there's a couple should have been pass interference calls in the end zone where they were going to at Jatavian. I mean, he's a former 5-star, and then you've seen what he's done over the last couple of weeks. I don't got to rehash that, but I really like him. I mean, I just think he's like way underpriced for the role that he has in an explosive offense. And I would love to stack him with Quinn. There's so much salary left over this week because I think there's so much value at quarterback that I was like, man, should I go Quinn or the dual threat in KJ Jefferson that just, shits out, 28 points a game when he's playing. So sorry. Should edit that out, but
not at all. That Arkansas BYU game is going to be really interesting. I really like it as another option for a game stack if you're looking at those guys. I know I've got Puka Nacua as an option there for me. He's too cheap. He, I think, is the guy that they want to get the ball in his hands any given Saturday. Yeah, it sounds like he's fully healthy. I believe he played against Utah State and was fine. We have also seen his replacement, Chase Roberts, was usually the guy who was filling in for him. Filled in very nicely. Was really doing a great job. He's out. He's injured now. So, that role with the jet sweeps and the manufactured touches seems to be entirely Puka's now. We also saw, Miles Davis, the running back, he's not a freshman. He's a senior, I think. But he's kind of an unknown running back that came out of nowhere, beating out, or looking better than Christopher Brooks and Katoa, I think is the other guy.
Yeah, Lopini
that we got over there. Lopini, yeah. So we're really looking for something from BYU to be able to move the ball, and I think Puka is going to be the guy that they'll lean on pretty heavily. I don't know the status or the health of Arkansas's secondary, but I know they've been banged up, and I know that teams have been able to take advantage of them. So I really like that, and I think Jaron Hall is a great option this week as well. Mm-hmm. That and BYU's defense has really been subpar compared to what we're used to. I know Bo lit them up a few weeks ago, so you'd think KJ Jefferson is probably going to have some similar success. I don't know if they've learned from their mistakes at BYU yet, or if they have they may have learned from their mistakes, but just don't have the talent to keep up with these guys. So,
yeah,
I'm taking you both going out, of course, back on that one train. It seems like he's trying to get back to where he was. I don't know. This is a perfect game for him. Michigan State is hot garbage this year, boys. So I can see why you took him. 8,200 is probably a little cheaper than what we've seen as well. So I think, compared to what he usually gets, compared to what he's usually priced, it usually be one where it's maybe not worth it. Ethan's took a stab at Braylon quite a few times, hoping, that he'd do this. Well, I think this is probably the week to get right when you think
I'm not as confident in Braylon Allen as I wish I was. I like him. But I think he carries a good amount of risk. Last week, he had a decent performance. He got a little banged up, and Ches Malusi came in and had a little bit more usage than usual. Malusi's out. He injured, I think, his wrist, so he's out. So Allen's got that going for him. So that's a check in the plus column there. What I'm worried about is that Graham Mertz came alive last week with Chimere DK. 3 touchdowns for DK. And, I mean, it is incredibly frustrating when you have Allen and you see Graham Mertz suddenly go off and throw for 4 touchdowns. I mean, I don't think that's going to be Jim Leonard's game plan for the season. But what they've got going for them is this Michigan State pass defense is, Brandon, you said it, they're garbage. They are 115th in the nation, allowing 292 yards per game through the air. They're not that much better against the rush. They are 105th in the nation, allowing 107.7 yards per game. So they're not great by any stretch.
Equal opportunists, both on rush, running and
for
throwing.
For sure. This offense though should be able to move the ball, and that's why I like Allen. Is because I'm banking on the fact that now that Malusi's not there, when they get into the red zone, when they get inside the 10, inside the 5, that ball's going to Allen. That ball's not going to be spread out. So Michigan State, let them do whatever they want, but tackle them before they get in the end zone when they go through the air. That's all I'm asking here is I think they'll be able to get quite a few red zone opportunities. And I think that's where Allen makes up the difference. I'm hoping on some positive touchdown variants.
Yeah, for sure. I want to touch on Jahmyr Gibbs. I see that you got Josh. Gibbs is on a roll finally. There's finally some life there. I'm glad to see. Nate said on one of the podcasts it was looking really sus there for a little bit. I was almost going to debate and just put him on my bench for the notice. But if you have him now, you don't have to put him on the bench. Now he's in the starting lineup. He's doing well. Playing Tennessee, is that a factor there, or was it just because he's 7,900? It was a good deal, or just trying to play chalk on this play? What was your thoughts here with Gibbs?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that I think he's the engine of that offense at this point. I mean, I think they're lacking. Even if Bryce Young plays, I mean, they don't have that like dynamic wide receiver 1 right now. At least they haven't stepped up yet. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is, just even a lot out of the backfield. He wins. I like guys that win multiple ways. So he can win running the ball, but he's winning a lot just catching screens out of the backfield or running routes out of the backfield. So I just think his explosive nature, and this is going to be a game where points are going to be put up. And I think Gibbs, over the last couple of weeks, he's been the guy. I mean, he didn't hit value last week, but that was really just because he didn't get the touchdowns. Because, Jalen Milroe is just not it. So, I think I'm pretty sure Bryce Young will be back this week, and I think that'll open up things for Gibbs and Gibbs a bit more. I think we'll see more of the Arkansas Gibbs than we did the A&M, even though at A&M he wasn't bad. He just didn't get the touchdowns.
Josh, I wanted to ask you because you probably see, do you think Miller is just not a good fit in that offensive system? Do you think it's just a bad pairing of really high star quarterback, but his traits and stuff like that isn't, a Bryce type situation? So I feel like that offense, it doesn't reflect Miller very well. That makes it the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's super talented, obviously, and the guy's a dynamic runner. I think he's a decent passer. I just don't think you're not opening up the full playbook that Alabama is typically running with Bryce Young. I mean, you're changing everything around essentially. So, yeah, I mean, if they had a whole offseason to build something around him, I mean, I think it could be good. But I mean, you're talking about these guys. I mean, Saban's got a system he wants to run in that offense, and Milroe and what he does best is not really what I mean, it takes it back to, man, I'm trying to think of the quarterback they had that was a primary runner like 7 or 8 years ago. Number 6.
Shoot. Let me see. I have to go back.
Yeah, this is bad. Anyways, bad potting here. But anyways, it's not, he wants a guy that can throw the ball. Talia, those type of guys. So
Yeah.
not Talia, Tua. But Talia.
Surprised because Ty Simpson, the freshman, he's actually that type of passing guy. He's more pass than rush. I mean, he's considered dual. But Ty Simpson's very much a pocket passer. I'm just surprised they didn't go with Simpson. Ethan, what's your thoughts on Alabama quickly before we move on?
Yeah, I think this is the week where we find out, is Alabama really in trouble? The pass defense for Tennessee is miserable. They're averaging over 300 yards a game allowed, and they have not faced a team with the weapons that Alabama has. I wonder how much Saban's going to let Bryce go. I assume Bryce is healthy. I haven't heard for sure that he's back in. If he's not, this game gets a whole lot more interesting and a whole lot more dicey for the Tide.
Yeah.
Gibbs is great because he's going to get the passing usage as well.
Yeah.
It's a great spot for him. But it's the kind of week where I think a Ja'Cory Brooks or a Jermaine Burton, even I think JoJo Earl is only like 3,200 or something like that.
Yeah.
Something weird might happen. We might see a guy emerge this week.
Isaiah Bond, maybe.
Yeah, we're in some good territory for that wide receiver room that really needs a win, and they really need a confidence boosting day. I'm curious how Heupel's offense is going to be able to move the ball. Coming into this season, we thought Alabama was going to be impenetrable. We thought this was going to be one of Saban's best teams. The defense, yardage wise, has lived up to the billing. I mean, I just lost it here. Second they're 8th in the nation in passing defense, and they're 6th in the nation in rush defense. So they're top 10 in both categories. They're stout. But it's hard. It's hard because I want to be able to say I think Tennessee is going to be able to keep up with them and challenge them for the win here. But this is very easily one of those spots that we see every year where Alabama gets right and they say, hey, we are who we are, and really comes through clutch. So it should be exciting. I personally would probably be taking the under in this game. It looks like we have a 66.5 point over under right now. So it'll be interesting. I would take Bama in the points, and I would also take the under.
Yeah. This just seems like, man, our boy Heupel, man, he's great at taking advantage of defenses that just aren't very good. But if he comes up against a team that can get a pass rush going and make it really, and Hooker too. I mean, he's good, but like he's got his flaws, and it feels like, this Bama defense has the assets to make this a difficult game, because you're not going to just blow past, I'll put it this way too. It's like Heupel, in my opinion, and I could definitely be wrong. I'm certainly not a genius, but he's not Lane Kiffin, where Lane Kiffin seems to be able to scheme up a game plan against Alabama. I don't see Heupel. I mean, Heupel does a few things and a few things only in that offense. So.
Absolutely. He's great, and he will beat inferior coaches.
Yeah.
His scheme, he has got a system and he knows how to use it. He'll scheme guys open. He's not going to alter his scheme against in a game like this. And I think obviously you've got Saban, you've got that experienced Alabama coaching staff. You've got to give the edge to them when it comes to coaching. And I think Heupel's going to have, a rough day. And if he's able to make those adjustments halfway through the game and we're able to see something a little bit different, Awesome. We'll see a shootout, and maybe they'll knock off Bama, but I just can't bring myself to pick Tennessee this week.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, Josh, since we have you, I know you'd like to hop over there, Mr. West. You guys talk about some games on there. What's some of the games that you're looking forward to this week, and some that you check on the lines in there that you're a fan of the Super Bowl?
Yeah. I haven't checked a lot of lines yet, other than just ones that are just scheming up DFS lineups and projections and stuff like that. So I don't think I have anything off the top of my dome. I'll just be giving bad advice if I try to just make something up. So
I feel you. So before we get with this, can you tell them what times that you're on and where people can find you and things like that, and a little bit more about fantasy points and what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we do a live stream right now. It's at I'm on Central Time, so everything's in my head in Central. So 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday nights. Try to give people a chance to watch that if they want live, but then also give them a chance to, listen to it back if they don't have time on a Friday night and they're doing something else like normal people do on Friday nights. They can listen on Saturday morning. So yeah, that's a big thing. And then, just our regular articles that we have, we cover most DFS slates, especially with Maction coming up. We're going to be covering that. And then weekly rankings and stuff like that. So, and waiver wire stuff.
Is there any, I know, we mainly cover GPP. Here we do some cash, but these guys got me one. The GPP this year. So as a guy that also where I came from, what's probably let's say just a few tips that you'd have for people that are doing cash, especially when they're doing double ups and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like you're looking for the guys that are going to hit value, right? The safer guys, worried less about ownership percentage than just going, okay, like Raheem Sanders is gonna, he's probably going to hit value against BYU at 6,500. So, I feel less, this is probably not the case fully, but I feel like there's a little bit less strategy than you geniuses that are doing GPP stuff and working through ownership and game stacks. And certainly that's part of it. But, you're just going, hey, how do I beat 50% of these people? And it feels a little bit more like, a typical CFF week than trying to find the Alabama wide receiver that's going to break the slate, against Tennessee. Yeah. So you cry a little bit less to sleep at night when you're like, oh, like I didn't have Sam Wiggles, and so I'm screwed and I can't do anything. But
that would be hard breaking through. But yeah, for sure. Like I said, padding your bankroll, like we talked about with cash games. For most of us now, it's just we don't have the time to go through all of this to put in there. So a lot of people just go straight for GPP for the bigger hit and stuff like that. So I do get where people are coming from. But for me, and Josh as well, like come from a system where just hit your double ups, that way you have an incoming bankroll, and then you can use that for GPP play or have it as
exactly.
And you can use it for whatever else that you want to.
Yeah, unfortunately, they've been having less. I don't know if you've noticed this, but less double ups this year and stuff like that. And so it's like it's almost like you like max out your bankroll pretty quickly if you're just doing cash stuff. But it is what it is.
For sure, and that's something that me and Chris have been talking about. Is where even if there's not as many, just focus on like the single entries or the showdowns or the afternoon or even the late night games where a lot of people, like a lot of the casuals, are not playing. It's like the more people that either know the team or you have those like us that are sharks that'll just look for the opportunity and get in there when there's like 200 people. You're going to get top 10 because you have just a bang of lineups. It's just like,
Speaking of, we got a great opportunity tomorrow with Marshall and Louisiana. I think a lot of bad lineups are going to be in there with too many quarterbacks, too many wide receivers, and a game that's going to be super run heavy.
I believe Ali is back now officially too, so now you have labor and Ali in the mix too. So
yeah, I haven't heard officially if he's back, but I know he's definitely been back in practice for the past few weeks. So
wait, Rasheen
that'll
Ali?
be interesting. Yeah,
he's supposed to be at least starting.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
He's also $1,000 stone minimum on the showdown slate. So
if they don't fix that, then just
if he plays, I mean, we could be a week early in this, and
Right.
he may not be back. I'm definitely going to check and see their schedule, see if they've got a bye week next week, because that may impact if they play him against Louisiana. But I mean, it sounds like he's doing everything in practice, doing all the right things. So
Wow. Remember last year when we got Rasheen Ali at 3K the first week of the year?
yeah,
I was like, man, this is where, like, before there's all the stats in it and you just have the off-season content, you're like, yeah. Rasheen Ali's a good deal. So hopefully he can ride, we can ride him to more value tomorrow night at 1K. Have a repeat.
the only thing is you want those guys in those lineups where there are a bunch of guys you want to jam in. Like, I don't really want to do anything with the extra salary tomorrow. I want to,
Yeah.
I want to, put a 1K in at captain, and then you're like, man, what do I do with the rest?
It's like Quinn Ewers this week. If it's like you do Quinn Ewers and Curtis Rourke, you're like, I got so much cash here and I don't know what to do. Like, because I don't want to go Mo Ibrahim.
Yeah, no, might as well just leave the money on the board. I mean, this is kind of bye weeks. So have to pay attention to that. But we want to thank everyone for listening. We want to thank Josh for coming on the show. Of course, you can find him at Twitter at CFF Guys. Give him a follow if you can, and we will see you next time.